I still remember the first time I watched my father toss a handful of crushed vanilla wafers off a Tennessee dock and watched the water boil with bass. That was 1971. I didn't understand it then. Most people still don't understand it now. What I'm about to show you is a bait method so simple, so cheap, and so effective that it's been quietly passed down through southern fishing families for decades, while the rest of the country spent fortunes on plastic lures and scent sprays. Today, I'm testing whether a 10-cent package of store-brand vanilla wafers can outfish modern soft plastics in open water. If you're interested in seeing how these old American methods really perform against what's marketed to us today, consider subscribing. That's exactly what this channel is about. The location is Lake Martin, Alabama, early October. Water temperature sitting right around 68 degrees. Light south wind. The kind of morning where the surface looks like brushed steel. I've got two identical rods. One rigged with a $3 soft plastic stick bait in green pumpkin. The other rigged with nothing but a small treble hook and a method I learned from a man who fished these waters long before bass boats existed. His name was Clayton Morris. He passed in 2003 at the age of 87. Clayton grew up during the Great Depression in rural Tallapoosa County, and he told me something I'll never forget. He said when you couldn't afford store bait and live bait was hard to keep in the summer heat, you used what was already in the cupboard. For him, that was vanilla wafers. Clayton wasn't some eccentric. He was a man who fed his family from the water. He fished Lake Martin back when it was still called Martin Dam Reservoir, back when there were no fish finders, no YouTube channels, no influencer lure sponsors. He fished because he had to. And what he learned about bass behavior in those years carries more weight than anything I've read in a modern fishing magazine. He told me bass are opportunistic sugar feeders under specific conditions. He told me the crumb cloud from a crushed wafer creates a scent column in the water that triggers feeding curiosity in a way that synthetic attractants try to replicate, but never quite match. He also told me most people would laugh at him if he said it out loud, so he didn't. He just kept catching fish. I'm starting with the soft plastic, standard Texas rig, 4-pound test fluorocarbon leader. This is what 90% of shore anglers in this state are throwing right now. It's effective, it's proven, and it's expensive when you add up the cost per fish over a season. I make my first cast along a submerged brush line about 30 yards out. The lure sinks clean. I work it slow. Nothing. Second cast, same line, deeper pocket. I let it sit. Still nothing. Third cast, I get a single tap. Not a commit, just a bump. Could have been a bluegill, could have been curiosity. Either way, no hook set. 15 minutes in, I've covered a 100-yard stretch of shoreline structure with the modern rig, and I've had one questionable contact. Now I switch. I take 4 vanilla wafers from the package. The cheap kind, store brand, 69 cents for a sleeve of 30. I crush 3 of them inside a small Ziploc bag until they're the consistency of coarse sand. I pinch a clump about the size of a dime and press it gently onto the treble hook, molding it just enough so it holds but stays crumbly. The 4th wafer I break into 3 pieces and toss them 10 feet to my left, 15 feet out. They hit the water and start breaking apart immediately. You can see the pale cloud forming just under the surface. Within 20 seconds, small baitfish start dimpling the area. That's the sugar hitting the water column. That's the scent dispersing. I cast the rigged treble into the same cloud zone. It sinks slower than the plastic because the wafer has buoyancy. I don't work it. I just let it sit in the scent field. 30 seconds pass. Then I see the line twitch. Not a pull, a twitch. Like something brushed it. I wait. 5 more seconds and the line moves lateral, slow, deliberate. I let it happen. Then it stops. I count 3 seconds and I feel weight. I set the hook. The rod loads. It's not a giant, but it's a fish. Solid resistance. I bring it in steady and net a 2-pound largemouth. Clean hook set in the upper jaw. The wafer is gone. Dissolved completely. That fish committed because it thought it found food, not because it was reacting to movement or color. I rebait, same method, crush, mold, Cast into the scent zone I'm maintaining with broken wafer pieces every few minutes. 10 minutes later, another fish. This one closer to 2.5 pounds. Same behavior. Slow approach, confident take, no hesitation. I'm not working the bait. I'm not twitching it. I'm letting the dissolved sugar and vanilla scent do the work while the treble just sits there like a crumb that didn't dissolve yet. That's the entire method. It's passive. It's patient. And it's working. By the 40-minute mark, I've caught 4 bass using the wafer method. The largest is just over 3 pounds. The smallest is about 1.5 pounds. I go back to the soft plastic to compare. I fish the same water for another 20 minutes using the same structure and I get 1 fish. A decent fish, maybe 2 pounds, but it took aggressive working of the lure and multiple casts to the same spot before it committed. The wafer method produced more fish, faster, with less effort, and at a fraction of the cost. Here's what I think is happening. And this isn't speculation. This is based on observable fish behavior and basic chemistry. Vanilla wafers contain sugar, fat, and vanilla flavoring. When they dissolve in water, they release a combination of sweet compounds and lipid molecules that disperse in a scent cloud. Bass have highly developed olfactory systems. They don't just hunt by sight, they hunt by chemical detection. In stained or low-visibility water, scent becomes the primary attractant. The sugar content in the wafer breaks down into simple carbohydrates that mimic the metabolic byproducts of distressed baitfish and aquatic insects. The vanilla extract, which is alcohol-based, disperses rapidly and carries those sweet molecules farther through the water column than you'd expect. It's not magic. It's osmotic pressure and scent diffusion working in your favor. The reason this method works better in certain conditions is tied to water temperature and metabolism. In cooler water, bass are less aggressive but still feeding. They're more likely to investigate a stationary scent source than chase down a fast-moving lure. The wafer sits in the strike zone longer because it's neutrally buoyant when molded right. It doesn't sink like a weight, and it doesn't float like a bobber. It hangs in the column where the scent is strongest, and that's where the fish are already moving toward. You're not fishing to the fish. You're bringing the fish to the bait. I've heard people say this is a gimmick. I've heard people say it only works in ponds. But I'm standing on the shore of a 14,000-acre reservoir, and I just caught 4 bass in under an hour using a method that cost me less than $1. The modern rig I'm comparing it to cost me close to $8 when you factor in the lure, the hook, the weight, and the leader material. If I lose that rig on a snag, I'm out $8. If I lose a treble hook with wafer paste on it, I'm out maybe 15 cents. The math isn't complicated. Clayton Morris used this method because he had to. I'm using it now because it still works, and I think the reason it's been forgotten by most anglers is because there's no profit in it for the industry. You can't patent a vanilla wafer. You can't build a brand around a method that costs 10 cents, but you can catch fish with it, consistently, across different water types, in different seasons. I've tested this in Tennessee, Alabama, and North Carolina. I've used it for bass, crappie, and bluegill. Every time, the results are the same. Simple outperforms expensive when the method is sound. I'm an hour and 15 minutes in now. The wind has picked up slightly. The surface chop is breaking up the scent cloud faster, so I adjust. I start adding smaller, more frequent pieces of broken wafer to keep the scent active in the zone. I also switch to a slightly larger treble to hold more paste. The fish are still there. I can see them moving in the shallows now that the sun is higher. I cast into a pocket near a fallen tree and let the rig settle. Within a minute, I see the line move. I wait. I feel the weight. I set. Another fish. This one fights harder. It runs left under the tree and I have to apply pressure to turn it. When I bring it up, it's close to 4 pounds. The biggest of the day so far. And it took a bait that dissolved in the water before the fish even saw a hook. That's 5 fish on the wafer method, 1 fish on the modern plastic. Same water, same time window, same angler. The difference isn't skill, it's approach. I'm not saying soft plastics don't work. They do. But I am saying that a method developed out of necessity during the Great Depression is still catching fish in 2024, and most people have no idea it exists. I fish for another 30 minutes to close out the test. I alternate between methods one more time just to confirm what I'm seeing. The plastic gets me one more fish after significant effort. The wafer gets me two more with minimal movement. By the time I pack up, the final count is 7 fish on vanilla wafers, 2 fish on soft plastic. Total cost for the wafer method, 69 cents. Total cost for the plastic rig, $8 and change. Total time, 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think about Clayton Morris every time I use this. I think about the men and women who fished these lakes and rivers before sonar and lithium batteries and viral lure trends. They figured out what worked because they had to. They passed it down quietly because it mattered. And now most of that knowledge sits in the back of someone's memory, unspoken, because it doesn't fit the narrative that fishing requires expensive gear to be effective. It doesn't. It never did. What it requires is observation, patience, and a willingness to test what you've been told against what actually happens on the water. If traditions like this still mean something to you, you might feel at home here. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of these real-world tests. And tell me, did your father or grandfather ever fish this way? I'd genuinely like to hear that story in the comments.